Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! So this happened like a year ago. I'm doing truck driving in a moving company in the big cities, and due to that, I have to park in some crappy places due to the customers living in crowded places. I had a gig where I had to drive like 150 kilometers to another city to do moving services with a team for a company. So once we got there, we saw that there was construction work going on right next door, which resulted in a part of the sidewalk which was huge enough for 2 trucks normally because there weren't a lot of companies there, I assume, being taken by it. Also, because it had only one right lane for safety reasons, I had to park my truck party on the sidewalk so that cars wouldn't run into each other. I made sure that there was enough room for people to go through without having to go by the car road. By the way, this is completely legal in my country to park during the parking of a vehicle. So it took about 30 minutes and there he was. This was around a 2-hour parking job. This middle-aged guy on a bike ready to conquer the world. The entitled biker. First he came next to my truck and started taking pictures. I didn't mind because this kind of behavior is nothing new to me. Hey, you have to move your truck. No man, I'm in the middle of the work and there was obviously enough room that you could go through. What if there comes someone with children and a carriage? Cue a woman walking through with a child carriage, looking confused because we both look at her. I give the entitled biker a smile. Never stopped working though. You know that parking like that is illegal, right? No, it isn't. You can look it up if you want. Move your truck. This is illegal. My coworkers come from the inside to bring more stuff for me to pack into the truck. Coworker 1 asks, "What's going on here?" Some jerk is trying to make me move my truck. So nothing unusual. Just pay no mind. Coworker number 2 says, "Don't you have anything better to do than to harass people who are trying to do their jobs? Move this truck or I'm going to call the police." We all just smile and leave him to his crap and keep working because we know that he can't do anything. The guy then proceeds to make a few phone calls, I assume to our company and to the police, and keep spewing his crap. We just ignore it because we have a lot of places to visit and know we will be doing at least 2 hours of overtime without him bothering us. Around 15 minutes go by. "Move the truck or I will call the police." Me, now smiling. Ha ha ha. "Who did you call just now then?" He goes silent for a minute and keeps on spewing about my illegal parking actions. Then I saw a police car drive behind his back. They looked at the situation, slowed down, smiled, and kept on driving. It was the middle of the day, so by now there were a lot of trucks all over the place taking up sidewalks in the area. Post trucks, vehicles bringing food to stores and so on. So I tell him, "Dude, can't you go harass the other truck drivers? Look around you, man. I'm not the only one parked like this." But either way, thanks for the laughs. I really enjoyed this. The entitled biker is fuming at this point, so me and my coworkers give up and just tell him to get lost if he doesn't have to pay our salary for the time that we are using with him instead of the customer. He finally decides to leave, but it isn't over yet. The entitled biker decides to go and post about this incident to Facebook to all his 100 friends, and my coworker spotted the post. He basically was rambling about how I was a jerk for parking there and we were disrespectful, and they just thanked me for the laughs they got out of me. First, I didn't pay attention to it, but then he had also ranted about that he was almost fined for calling the emergency number on us, and that they warned him that if he called again, that he would get fined for disrupting the emergency line. But yeah, happy ending. It was a long day, but we got a lot of good laughs about it, and the construction workers also laughed. What the hell was that about? And we even told our boss about it, who also laughed how some people can be that stupid. This happened a few years ago before COVID-19. I'm a disabled army veteran who also has PTSD. I'm also hearing impaired and wear hearing aids. I decided to go to Wally World for a few items. I took my PTSD service dog with me. I didn't have my hearing aids as they had gone in for repairs. So I'm pretty much deaf. It was pretty hot in a store, so I took off my coat and put it on my rollator. I also have a cane with me, which I use to get items down from high shelves. Unfortunately, I was wearing my favorite shirt, a long-sleeved royal blue t-shirt with a neon green NSFW pic on it, something a Wally World employee wouldn't wear. My hair was in a ponytail. I had taken off my disabled army veteran cap because I was hot. So I'm going down the aisle slowly, obviously because I'm disabled, using my rollator with my dog on my left side. I'm a high-functioning autistic with a bit of OCD, so I tend to straighten out shelves as I go. No big deal, right? Absolutely wrong. Now, I'm doing my thing pretty much deaf without my hearing aids. I could read lips if you faced me, when all of a sudden my dog turned around and started pulling. Huh? Then someone behind me pulls on my ponytail hard and almost knocks me over. I react instinctively, haul back with a titanium-plated elbow to the person's gut, then swing up my hand with a karate fist to the face of the person. No thought, just pure instinct. Then I grabbed my cane from the basket of my rollator, spun around and got into a defensive position. I had also pushed the 911 alert button around my neck and yelled that I had been assaulted and location and so on, and 911 replied that the cops were being dispatched. There she was, getting up from the floor with a bloody nose. A wild Karen. She screamed, "Help! I've been assaulted by an employee!" I roared back at her in my drill sergeant voice. "What makes you think that I work here? I have a rollator and a service dog. I don't work here. You assaulted me." "Yes, you work here. I saw you straighten up the shelves," Karen insisted. "That doesn't mean that I work here," I yelled. "I have OCD and like to straighten up things." "Quit lying. You work here, and you assaulted me. I'm going to get you fired, and you're going to go to jail." My service dog is going crazy and barking. I'm very upset and crying, and my service dog is trying to calm me down. Store employees, the manager and security come, and shortly the police. We went to the store office. They put us in separate rooms. The police review the tapes, and one takes my statement. A nice female store employee is with me in a room because I'm crying and very upset. The security and police finish reviewing the camera footage and ask me if I want to press charges. I say definitely yes. Karen gets upset by this, kicks the police and resists arrest. I find out that this is not her first offense of harassing and assaulting customers or employees, so she will serve some long jail time. I get a $250 gift card from the store, my service dog gets several bags of treats from the store, and I get profuse apologies from the store manager. The morning at Millie's diner was as typical as any other. I walked in, greeted by the familiar waitress Sue, who waved me over to my usual spot by the window. "Morning. The usual, hun?" she asked. "Yeah, thanks, Sue. And can I get an extra side of toast today?" I replied. "Coming right up." She scribbled on her pad and hustled off. As I waited, I sipped my coffee, looking out the window at the quiet town waking up. This diner was the kind of place where everyone pretty much knew everyone, or at least recognized faces. The door swung open again, bringing in a gust of cold air. I looked over as a couple of regulars walked in, nodding my way. They settled at the counter and I turned back to enjoy my coffee. My breakfast arrived, pancakes piled high, sausages on the side and my extra toast. "There you go. Anything else I can get for you?" Sue asked. "This is perfect. Thanks," I replied. As I ate, a sudden loud voice from outside sliced through the morning calm. Curious, I looked out the window. Across the street in the diner's parking lot, a woman was shouting at a man next to a car. Her gestures were wild, pointing and waving her arms. "What's going on out there?" I muttered. Tom, sitting in the next booth, leaned closer and said, "Looks like some parking dispute." The woman's voice rose even higher, and even though I couldn't make out all the words, the tone was unmistakable. She was furious. The man she was yelling at seemed calm. His body language relaxed despite the confrontation. "Seems pretty heated for just a parking spot." I said that. Tom shrugged, sipping his coffee. "You know how it is. Small things can blow up fast." I nodded. The argument grew louder, drawing more looks from inside the diner. People began murmuring to each other, forming theories and sharing incredulous looks. Should someone go check it out? I wondered aloud. "Hey, let's give it a minute. They'll probably sort it out," he replied, but we both kept our eyes on the window. As I continued to watch the heated exchange outside, it became clear that things weren't calming down. The woman, who we shall call Karen, was now practically screaming. Despite my intention to focus on my breakfast, the disturbance was too distracting to ignore. Sue came over, refilling our coffees. She looked out the window and asked, "What's all that ruckus about?" "Parking spot dispute," Tom replied. "Over a parking spot? You've got to be kidding me. I mean, I know Karen's got a temper, but this is something else," Sue said. The man outside seemed to be trying to reason with Karen, but Karen wasn't having any of it. Just then, a couple from another table stood up, their curiosity getting the better of them. "We're going to check what's going on," the man said as they headed for the door. "Be careful," Sue called after them. Curiosity overcoming my better judgment, I wiped my mouth with a napkin and slid out of the booth. "I'll go see what's happening too. Maybe we can calm things down," I told Tom and Sue. Outside, Karen was red-faced, yelling, "You had no right to take back spot. I was turning in first." The man, who remained calm, replied, "Hey, I was already parking when you drove up. Stop this nonsense. I saw the spot first. You people always think you can just do whatever you want," Karen said. A small crowd from the diner had gathered by now. The couple who had left before me were trying to reason with Karen, but she was beyond listening. I stepped closer, hoping to diffuse the tension. "Hey, let's all take a deep breath here. It's just a parking spot, right? There are plenty of them at this early hour. No need for all this shouting." Karen screamed at me, "Stay out of this. This doesn't concern you." "It concerns all of us when you're causing such a scene, Karen," I replied. Suddenly, Karen's anger reached the boiling point. She hurled a racial slur at the man. She called him the N-word and told him he has no business being here to begin with. An immediate gasp rose from the crowd. "Hey, there is no need for that kind of talk," I called out. The man's face tightened. He turned sharply and walked towards his car. "That's enough. You crossed the line, witch," he yelled. Karen ignorantly yelled back, "Yeah, you better walk away." But the man wasn't retreating. He reached his car, popped the trunk, and to everyone's horror, he pulled out a gun. The area erupted in chaos. People began scrambling back into the diner. I ducked behind a nearby car. From my cover, I watched as the man fired round after round into Karen's car. The sound of gunfire was deafening. The sight of shattering glass and punctured metal was terrifying. Karen screamed, falling to the ground, her hands over her head. After what seemed like an eternity but was probably only a few seconds, the gunfire stopped. The man spat on the ground near Karen, then turned and ran. People slowly came out from their hiding spots. I approached Karen cautiously. She was still on the ground. "Are you okay?" I asked her. Karen was incoherent. "It's okay, help's coming," I reassured her, though I wasn't sure of anything at that moment. Police cars and an ambulance approached eventually. I remained near the diner's entrance, watching as officers cordoned off the area with yellow tape and began interviewing witnesses. The chill of the morning was gone, replaced by a cold realization of what had just occurred. Karen was placed on a stretcher and loaded into an ambulance. Her face was pale, her eyes staring blankly ahead as the paramedics talked to her. I could overhear snippets of their conversation trying to assess her condition. "Can you feel your legs now?" one paramedic asked her. I don't know," Karen muttered. "Everything happened so fast." The police started asking some of us for statements. An officer approached me. "Can you tell me exactly what you saw?" he asked. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. It started over a parking dispute. The woman was very upset. Then, well, it escalated. She said some really harsh and racist things, and he pulled out a gun and started shooting at her car. The officer wrote down my words, nodding. "Did you see where he went after the shooting?" "He ran that way." I pointed towards the back of the diner. "He was quick. It all happened so fast. Thank you for your cooperation," the officer said, moving on to the next witness. As the crowd began to disperse, some returning inside the diner, others leaving the scene entirely, I felt a profound sense of unease. I decided to walk around a bit. Tom caught up with me. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked. I don't know, man, it's a lot to take in. I can't believe this happened here, over something so minor. I replied, yeah, it's scary. Makes you think about how quickly things can turn. Tom said, I hope Karen's okay despite everything. We walked in silence for a few moments, each lost in our thoughts. Later that evening, as the town started to settle, I found myself back at Millie's diner. Sue came over, refilling my cup without asking. They caught him. She said that. I looked up, meat in her eyes. Yeah, just a few blocks from here. Didn't get far. The police were thorough. I think it's a relief, I guess, for everyone's sake. Well, it is. I agreed. And that's how that day's crazy events came to an end. Hope Karen learned a good lesson that day, as I think all of us witnessing the whole thing on that day learned something as well. This malicious compliance is not my own, but of a friendly, vindictive old man who I will call Fred, that I worked with for around 5 months. As many of you know, I, male 18, do tree work for a living and have for around 2 years now. My boss, who I will call Duncan, is a 32-year-old hotshot and the owner of our small company, who can sometimes be a real tool when things aren't going fast enough on a job. Now, Duncan has an old family friend named Fred. Fred worked with Duncan's stepfather at a cement plant for 20 years and is his stepfather's best friend. Fred also retired from said cement plant. Fred is the kind of man who would give you the shirt off his back while being absolutely vindictive, sarcastic, and witty about you not having a shirt. However, Fred was working for Duncan as a favor, since Duncan was understaffed at the time. Because of this, Fred couldn't care about his job or what Duncan said or did. Fred took as many breaks as he wanted when he wanted to, and wouldn't hesitate to tell you where to stick your opinion if you said something about it. Fred is also a complete bull of a man, stands at a hearty 6'3" and 275 pounds, and easily makes Duncan 5'10" and 160 pounds look like a shrimp. So usually Duncan isn't too quick to bother him. So one day we were all doing our thing on a job. We had a big old pin oak to take down, so we were all in our usual positions. Jake up in the bucket truck, James running our loader, and Fred and I chipping brush and shooting the breeze. Although I'll admit we were slightly slacking off. Duncan decided he was going to sharpen all of the chainsaws that were not currently in use. So he gets to work. Now, for those of you who don't know, sharpening a saw takes a while, and on top of that, all of our saws were extremely dull, so they took a lot of sharpening. In 95-degree heat, while being stooped down on the door of one of the boxes on our bucket truck. Duncan was sharpening saws for the better part of 2 hours, 8 saws. When he finished, we had the vast majority of the tree cut down. All of the branches were off, and Fred and I had long since shut down the chipper, and were taking our lunch since we had nothing to do, as wood is moved from the ground to the dump trailer by James in a loader. For some reason, the fact that we had 20 minutes more work infuriated Duncan. This is especially odd because the tree was coming down very quickly compared to usual, as it was Friday and we all was hoping to cut off early as we sometimes did. Duncan flew off the handle screaming at us for the better part of 10 minutes, which ironically extended us to 30 minutes more on the job rather than 20. And he ended his tirade with, I'm leaving to go do estimates finish and go cut firewood at the yard. It will not be cutting off a second before 3:30. As Duncan stormed away, Fred piped up from the back of the group just as sweet as pie with anticipation dripping from his voice. Hey, lipstick. Which saw do you want us to use? To which Duncan replied, I don't care, and stormed away. Me and Fred smiled at each other, thinking the same thing. When we arrived back at the yard, we began getting saws off the truck. From the smallest of trim saws to the largest brand spanking new Stihl MS 881 Magnum with a 42-inch bar that we used to cut particularly large stubs. Me and Fred both grabbed a saw and fired them up. We began to cut and cut and cut and cut. For almost 3 hours we cut firewood, making sure to hit the dirt with the saws as much as possible, and going through every saw until they were almost unusable from how dull they were. Trust me, if anyone knows how to dull a saw quickly, they are a tree professional. Fred and I were having the time of our lives, dancing and singing and cracking jokes while we cut, while screaming to be heard over the painful wailing of saws being tortured. When 3:30 rolled around, we threw the saws back in the truck and went home. And I still swear to this day that I heard Fred singing at the top of his lungs as he rolled down to the lane in a cloud of black smoke, which may have been his crankshaft eating some gaskets. Monday, when we got to work, we rolled out to the job site, and Duncan fired up the mammoth still to crash a huge hickory tree in the middle of the woods. He began to cut the tree. The wood was smoking from the terrible amount of friction from a saw that was as dull as it could get. Duncan stopped. He checked the chain, he got another saw, and checked the chain. Dull. He went through every saw and checked chains, getting redder and redder. He walked over to me and Fred. "Fred, Blake, why is every saw dull?" To which Fred responded, "Well, Duncan, you told us that you don't care which saw we used. So we used all of them. That shouldn't be an issue, right? Since you didn't care." To which Duncan sighed, knowing exactly what we did, and walked off to sharpen all the saws again. Fred was, is, and always will be my hero and my best friend. He's currently back to living the retired life of working on cars and fishing. Many days I miss him and his offhanded comments, but I'm carrying on his legacy of wittiness. Disclaimer: Duncan is not a bad boss at all. In fact, he's the best boss I've ever had. He just has a mindset that time is money and that some things should go faster than they possibly ever could. This story takes place about 2 or 3 years ago on a cold November night. I had been invited to a girls' night with a couple of girlfriends. About a year before this all took place, I had met a now very good friend of mine, Annie, a bright-eyed, brilliantly smart young girl who had recently moved across the globe from China. We met in college and instantly hit things off. Shortly after we met, Annie also met Sophia. I was told that they met while shopping at the same store, but I honestly think that they met because Sophia wanted them to meet. She probably saw us hanging out here and there and just had to be a part of it. Now, Annie is a very bright and optimistic person and sees the good in everyone, so trying to warn her about Sophia proved to be futile. On a good note, she didn't believe anything Sophia said about me either. I introduced her to a few of my other girlfriends and they welcomed her with open arms. So, to the night of the story, I had received a text from Katie asking if I wanted to join her, Annie, Sophia, and another friend of ours, Maria, for some dinner and shopping. I was at first reluctant to say yes because Sophia, granted at this point she hadn't really been bothering me, but we still very much didn't get along. But decided against it because I really needed the night to just have fun. I quickly got ready and met up at our chosen spot, which was maybe 10 to 15 minutes from my apartment. I instantly knew I made the wrong decision when I walked up and the first thing out of this witch's mouth was, "Wow, that dress seriously makes you look fat. Also, you're way too overdressed." I was not. I had on a simple red bodycon dress, my favorite style, and some matching 3-inch heels. My makeup wasn't too flashy, my hair was done up in a curly ponytail. We all were pretty well dressed. Not to mention that the restaurant we were eating at was noted to be formal. I am also not fat, not trying to body shame anyone. I am 5'9" and weigh 45 kilograms. This woman and I were very similar in weight. I gave her a cold, "don't screw with me" glare and complimented everyone on their wonderful choice of attire but her, just for a bit of pity revenge. It was a Friday night, so the restaurant was pretty packed and we had to wait about 20 minutes before being seated. Dinner actually went very well to my surprise, besides the occasional attention to me outburst from Sophia during conversations. We didn't stay long after we were done because we were all excited to go shopping and buy ourselves some new outfits, accessories, and some very much needed household items. My toilet paper was running low. It was fairly early in the night, about 6:30, by the time we left the restaurant and decided to stop by a few stores. We eventually came up at this cute little chic-style clothing store. I had maybe been in the store once or twice prior, and remember that they had a great selection of styles. Maria and I headed to the back because she and I shared a similar fashion sense, while Annie, Sophia, and Katie stayed up at the front and looked at some jewelry. I was honestly enjoying myself and was beginning to think that maybe it was a good idea I decided to come after all. Plus, I hadn't seen Maria in a little while and it was great to catch up with her. She and her now husband were actually engaged, and she was telling me all about how her wedding planning was going. In a previous conversation we had a few months before, I had to tell her I couldn't make it to the wedding because I would be flying out of town during that month to stay with some family and attend the funeral. Our conversation was going great when I, all of a sudden, heard a loud, "Oh my god, look how cute and small he is," followed by a nervous-sounding, "Ma'am, please step away from my baby." Maria was no stranger to the likes of Sophia, so she and I both headed to the front of the store to see what was going on and maybe put a stop to it before things got out of hand. Near the jewelry rack stood a young mother, late 20s, early 30s, and what looked to be her sleeping newborn son in a car seat stroller, and a very flamboyant Sophia who couldn't read the social cues to back up. She proceeded to get closer to the infant and gushed out loudly, "He's seriously the cutest thing I've ever seen," then turned to us. "Guys, look at this little stinker. I'm actually surprised you," turned back to the mother, "have him out this late. He should be at home." The woman looked from Sophia to us, almost as if asking for some backup. Annie then stepped forward and gently grabbed Sophia's arm, trying to pull her backwards. "Sophia, I think you should leave them alone. You're kind of too close." "Oh, get lost. I'm not hurting anyone." This is the part where I wish I would have left. By this point, the baby had awoken from the loud voices and looked on the verge of tears. The witch turned back to the mother and said, "I'm going to hold him for a bit, okay?" The woman vehemently pulled the stroller back and said, "No, you need to leave me alone." The other girls and I pleaded with Sophia to just leave the poor woman and her baby alone, but she refused. "No, I am going to hold him. You can do your shopping if you want, and then come back to get him when you're done." I think the woman went into shock from the audacity Sophia had because she stood frozen. We all did. Our bad. When Sophia reached forward and began to unbuckle the baby from the car seat. I would like to note that this baby was tiny and couldn't have been more than a week old. As Sophia proceeded to remove the buckles from the child, the woman's hand zipped down faster and smacked her so hard across the face that she nearly fell into the jewelry stands. Cue the chaos. "Ow! What was that for? Who do you think you are?" The baby starts screaming. The four of us try to hold Sophia back as she proceeds to charge at the woman. The store employee comes asking what's the matter and quickly proceeds to call the police upon seeing a screaming child, upset mother, and psychopathic Sophia trying to claw her face off. "You're a witch. Stay away from my baby," she yells at the mother. "Sophia, calm down. Screw you." The baby screams louder and store employees attempt to defuse the situation by standing between the mother and the five of us. That psycho eventually calms down and the cops show up to take everyone's statements. No shocker, Sophia was in the wrong and is almost whisked away into a cop car, but the woman decides not to press charges, simply asking to just leave because she's tired and needs to calm down her little one who is still fussing. I also doubt that anything would have happened to Sophia because her parents would have gotten her out with no marks. In the end, I definitely regretted going out. The only things that kind of made it worth it were that I got to see some of my other good friends. I bought a few cute outfits and I had a great dinner. I never did get the toilet paper I needed though. Edit, for confusion on the funeral. I've had a few comments and PMs with people wondering how you can schedule a funeral months in advance. A family friend of our grandfather died and a lot of her family and friends couldn't make certain dates, so she and the rest of her family preserved the body until an agreed upon date. That date happened to be 4 days before Maria's big day, and when she invited me to the wedding, it was about 2.5 months before the funeral was scheduled, so I had to tell her that I couldn't make it.